Merkel Media.
And it wasn't even 10, 15 yards into the woods. I noticed that there was something behind us bipedally. And I was like, okay, he's going to freak out if I tell him there's something following us. I was like, best thing I can do is just let him hear it for himself. We kept walking and we pulled ourselves up out of the creek bed by this fallen tree. We pulled ourselves up and we started walking, and he just stopped. And he was in front of me. And he said, you hear that? He said, there's something following us. I said, yeah, it's been following us for about 20 minutes. And he said, what is it? I said, it's probably a Bigfoot.
All right, today we got Harley and Glenn in studio. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here, and I am trying to wake up for this early Monday morning interview. So guys, this was a conversation that was supposed to start. I mean, we started talking about doing this, 3-4 months ago?
Yeah, I think it was around in June.
Yeah, it's been a bit. But here we are, two local guys, East Tennessee guys, and I have you both in here. We're going to focus on you, Harley, mostly, but I wanted to have Glenn in here if he could have made it, because I just think it's just a little bit of a unique situation on how it all kind of tied together, because the first time I heard about you, Harley, was through Glenn, and Glenn hits me up and it's like, which, by the way, Glenn, you got to stop hitting me up on Facebook, man. Anyways, we'll do that later. So ADHD. So Glenn, you were on the show for episode 528, and I called it Virginia Mountain Dracula, I think is what I called it. Mm-hmm. And if anybody hasn't heard that, they got to go back and listen, because that was a wild one. Yeah. And we were supposed to record remotely, and I connected with you, and I was like, where are you from, man? And you're like, I don't want to say where you're from, but like East Tennessee, you're like 20 minutes from the studio. Yeah. And I was like, why don't you just come on in? And I remember reading the email and connecting with you and thinking, this guy's full of crap. That's what I thought. And then you come in, and when I invited you in studio, I was like, why am I inviting this guy in the studio? Like he's like, because the way you wrote the email was just like, I was like, no, I think he's playing games with me. Right. And then when you sat down with me and you talked to me face to face and gave me more detail that was in the email, I was like, oh, I 100% believe this guy.
Well, I got a brother and a sisters you can talk to on that. I mean, it's
let me tell you, we've had, so my buddy Justin from the Appalachian Intelligence podcast, I don't know if he's still doing the podcast, but anyways, Justin Kaiser, he lives in Haysai, and he went out looking, and he texted me probably about 2 months ago, and he's been out looking. He's found some interesting spots in the area. Like he and his friends found a big rock that has what seems to be inscriptions on it. And I've shown it to treasure hunters recently, and they all agree that it's designed, it's not natural. And so they go out doing their thing, and he texts me not too long ago. He's like, I think I found the cemetery. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. So I might be going up there sometime to find Dracula. You want to come? Let me know.
I can take you right to the spot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, man. You ride with me.
We'll go up.
Okay.
Count me in too then. Yeah. Yes, I got to see this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a wild story, man. You ever hear that story?
He told me about it.
Yeah.
It gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's nightmare fuel.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was the episode with you, and I was really glad that you hopped on with me. And then since then we've kind of kept in touch, and you tell me about Harley and his work. So, how did you guys get connected?
I think it was through some Facebook group. I made a post in a Facebook group, and then Glenn commented on it, and then we messaged each other, and it just went from there. And then we've been friends ever since. And it's this area that Glenn found it, and it's unbelievable. Like, that place is full of everything, like Bigfoot, Dogman, and other things. Like, I found 3-toed tracks in this place recently, and it's more questions than answers, honestly.
What's the area, and how'd you find it?
Yeah, so I was listening to, different shows and reading different stories. And so there was this story of this guy that was doing some side work for UT because he was a student, but he was doing it for the forestry service. And he didn't give the name of the cemetery or anything. He just said he was in Cosby. And he said that he had pulled up to this cemetery, and it was sort of chilly outside. So that leads into something. But he said that when he got up to the cemetery, there was a woman walking down the side of the cemetery outside the fence. And she was nude. She didn't have any clothes on, and she was just covered in blood. And she was in a state of shock. And when he got closer to her, he could see that there was like pieces of, flesh torn out of her body. So he didn't know if it was some kind of a, serial killer or, something like that, And she wouldn't talk to him. She was just whimpering. And so he took his shirt off because it was chilly outside. And he had two shirts on, and he put it around her, put her in the truck, took her to the local hospital, dropped her off. They sort of took a statement from him. He leaves. They call him back 30 minutes later, or maybe an hour later, somewhere in there, and said, "You need to come back up here. Would you come back up here? Because she's not talking to anybody. We've had the sheriff up here they're trying to get her to talk, and she's not speaking. Maybe there's some rapport. She trusts you. You're the one found her." So he said, "Sure." So he goes back up, and when he gets in there, he says, "Hey, I'm here to see Jane Doe that was brought in here. And she's not speaking to anybody. They requested that I come back." They said, "Yeah, somebody already come and got her." And he was like, "You just called me." And so they had it on video surveillance, and it looked like from what he said, it was like an unmarked ambulance. They come in, put her in a wheelchair, wheeled her out to the ambulance, and they never seen her again. And then he called and was trying to talk to the sheriff, and he said, "Just drop it." And so the only time you're really going to do that is it's not from you were kidnapped by a mass murder or something. It's something like they don't want you to investigate or even know about, because this is how they work. So I started looking on the map at cemeteries in Cosby and doing some research. And I think he mentioned that there was like a stream that was running along the cemetery, and there was a campground not far away, and which is hotspots for these things. And so, I pinpointed to one specific one, and pulled it up on, I think it was Google Live or whatever it is, where it shows you, and I could see the fence around it. So I thought, that's it. So I was talking to him. I'm like, "Hey man, you need to go out to this cemetery and just check it out." "I'm not going."
Yeah, I went in there it was December 7th, and I was out there at like the butt crack of dawn. It was 27 degrees. I was freezing my hind end off. And so I was walking around and looking, and I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Like, how do I even find a Bigfoot? I mean, because previous to that, I had my first encounter with a Bigfoot in 2020. I didn't believe in it. I just thought it was a fairy tale or stuff like that. And then I seen one, and I stopped deer hunting for 3 years. And then I mustered up the fear to go back this last Thanksgiving and go back deer hunting. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and look for these things. And I didn't know how to do it. And I looked up Bigfoot research in Tennessee, and Scott Carpenter's name had pulled up, and I was like, okay. And then unfortunately he had done passed away. And I was like, well, this sucks. And so I'm out there and I'm walking around and looking, and I'm just like, there's something off in this place. Like, much less I was freezing. I just had a hoodie on and my jeans and my muck boots, because that's normally what I wear out there is my muck boots. And I was just looking around. I was like, this is weird. But I was filming everything. And I'm like, you know what? I'm leaving. So that night I couldn't sleep. And I was like, I was up all night, and I was looking through the videos and stuff that I had, and I was like, holy cow. And like, there was right there in the cemetery where I was at, I panned the camera from right to left, and there was a huge face sitting in the laurels. Like, you can see the black eyes, you can see the nose, a brow ridge, conical shaped hair with like blonde hair. It was
blonde hair, really?
Yeah, it was like blondish in color. Yes. And so I was like, holy cow. And then I got to looking through my video a little bit further, and there's a figure that's moving from right to left, and it's almost like it's phasing in and out. But whenever it gets to the area that it thinks I can't see it or whatever, but I never seen it. I never heard it, but it's fully manifest, so to speak. And then there's this huge black figure that just walks in behind the tree, and like, you can see the conical shaped head and everything. And I've went over to that area where that tree was falling over, and I'm 6'6", and this thing's head was like a foot away from the tree that fell over. So it had to have been at least 8.5 foot tall, and it moved from right to left. And I tried to clear that distance. It cleared the distance in like 7 seconds, and it took me like a minute to get through that. So I timed myself to move through that, and I was like, you know what? That wasn't a person. It was way too big. So
what were you filming with?
I was just using my phone at the time.
Really?
Yeah, I was just had my camera going in front of me, and I was just filming everything. But I was on high alert, because I was looking out for bears or whatever the case may have been. I just didn't fully know, and I got more than what I bargained for being out there. Man, it's just been ever since, like December 7th to now. I've been in there over 9 months, and
so you're that new at this whole thing.
Yes, I am.
So, you direct him out there to the cemetery, and the reason why you directed him out to the cemetery was why?
I'm not going.
Well, I know that, but like, what was the reason for pinpointing the cemetery?
We were just because of the story that I had read, and I seen a post that he'd put up, and so I started talking to him. So it was like, well, you know what? I'll send him out there.
So you sent him out there not for Bigfoot, though?
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, Bigfoot.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So I'm forgetting something you said here. We went from a girl who was abducted at.
Yeah. So when he told that story, he didn't come right out and say it was a Bigfoot, right? So what I did was I was sort of like reading in between the lines of everything that he was talking about, and then the resources that were close to that, and so I just was basically connecting the dots.
So you connected the dots to where he found her?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Now I'm tracking.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you had just said you had a Bigfoot encounter in 2020 that caused you to stop hunting.
Hunting and fishing, everything.
You're from the Newport area?
Yeah, I live in Newport, but I grew up in Jacksboro. It's just above Knoxville.
Okay. Is that where you had the encounter?
No, it happened in Pound, Virginia. And that's another connection for me and Glenn, because Glenn had heard my encounter, I think, didn't you?
Yes.
Somewhere, yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey guys, real quick, if you have a story you want to share with me on the show, go ahead and shoot me an email at contact@theconfessionalspodcast.com. If you want more shows every week, theconfessionalspodcast.com/join, or you can hit the join button on YouTube, become a member, get extra content. Both locations have the same content, just 2 different landing spots for your membership. So if you want more of the show, become a member to the Confessionals Podcast. So I had a lady, this doesn't have anything to do with your encounter spot, but where you live now. I had a lady on the show a while ago who, her and her husband moved from Virginia to Newport area. They bought a piece of property and they were planning on retiring there. And I think it was for 7 years they were tormented by whatever was existing on the property, to the point that they picked up and left and moved to Indiana. That was, I think, last December.
Rankin Hill.
What's that?
I think I know exactly who you're talking about.
Oh, really?
I think I know. Yep, because you said from Virginia to Newport to Indiana. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah.
And when I talked to her, I was like, I wish I would have known you before you moved. I had just connected with her right after she moved.
Well, and I'll tell you, when I went out there recently to that place, and I was walking along the railroad tracks.
Yep, you know exactly what I'm talking about there.
And I got something on film. It's a perfectly symmetrical black circle, and it's huge.
How huge?
Like I'd say every bit of 10 foot across.
Ground level or sky?
It's levitating above the ground.
Really?
It's just like a big sphere, just right there in the.
Was it moving?
Like when I was moving through the area. I don't know if you ever seen the video that Scott had, but when Scott was hiking down the Turkey Pen Trail and that portal manifested, it was like that. It just manifested out of nowhere.
So you saw it on video manifest? Mm-hmm. Really?
Yep.
So it didn't move anywhere, it just manifests
right in that spot.
How long on the video was it there?
Like it wasn't even 5 or 10 seconds. Like I've got.
So you didn't see it with your naked eye?
Frame. Yeah, I didn't see it with my naked eye. No, okay. I was recording behind me at that time. So it was very weird. I was like, if I ain't no genius, but perfect circles don't happen in nature. Like, I mean, it's a perfectly symmetrical circle.
And you said you were recording behind you
with a backtrail camera.
So you're doing the Carpenter method.
Yep.
Gotcha. What are you using for that?
I had a GoPro, but now I'm just strictly using my spare iPhone 14.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
I have a camera facing behind me. So.
I don't recall exactly what is the camera model. It's not a GoPro. Jack, if you I know you know, what's the camera that Joe was telling us about? That
I think it's called Instacam.
I don't know how much they are, but they have self-stabilizing on the inside. So if you're looking to do the back thing and walking around, an Instacam, they look like GoPros. They're little tiny things. It might be good to hook on the back of you, because it might actually help you with stabilizing the footage.
Yeah, that's the only downside of doing what I do, because when I did have a GoPro, it was pretty steady, but now that it got broke, I'm like, it's
also
hard.
This one, the Instacam is also like you can use voice, so you can like camera record and it'll start recording for you. So that way you don't have to worry about taking your bag off and just start talking.
Yeah, that's real high tech.
Yeah, but anyways, I mean, if you're gonna be doing this stuff, it's good to start getting familiar with different things that might be able to help you. So you in 2020 have the Bigfoot encounter, and that was the life-changing moment, I suppose. So tell us what happened there.
So at that time, I worked for an auction company named Tri-State Auction Realty. We were up in that location for 2 weeks. The week prior, I was up there and I was talking to the owner of the sawmill, and he was telling us about the bear that was coming into the sawmill and rummaging around through the trash. And I asked the guys, like, is he a pretty good sized bear? He's like, yeah. And he said, there's far worse things in the mountains than that. And I'm like, that stuck with me. I was like, well, what's he talking about? And I jokingly said Black Panther. I'm like, he's talking about the Black Panthers, because I always heard stories of them, and I've even heard them, so I know
I've seen them. They're here.
Well, there's your verification right there. There's your verification. So going on the rest of that week, nothing really happened. We had the auction on a Saturday, and my boss come up to me. He said, do you want to stay up here another week and help people load their equipment? And I was like, yeah, I ain't got nothing better to do. Okay. He said, all right, so I'm going to send these other guys on. You can stay up here. He said, I'll get you a hotel for the next week. I said, all right. Sunday came around and it was raining, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not just going to sit in this hotel all day. I'm just going to go out there and get some work done. So I go out there, and I was on a skid steer riding around, throwing stuff on pallets and looking around. I was like, all right, I got whatever I need to done, because I had a paperwork of who all had bought what. So I got done and I walked around the wood line. And sure enough, I was looking and I was like, well, those are big feet. And I was like, that's got to be a person. And then I put my foot next to it and I was like, well, that's a Bigfoot. I jokingly thought Bigfoot. And I was like, okay, somebody's playing a prank on me. I was like, either there's a homeless person out here walking around barefooted or what, I don't know. So Monday, nothing happened. Tuesday, nothing happened. Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, that was the day that shattered everything for me. That's when I learned that the world is not how we are supposed to see it. So I get out there that morning. I remember distinctly that I was running late, and I pulled up to there was 2 gates. I had to, right at the top of the hill, I had to unlock a gate, and there was a guy already there waiting on me. I was like, well, okay. So I unlocked the first gate and we drove down into the holler, and I unlocked the second gate and we get in there, and he only had like 2 or 3 pallets. So I just hopped on the skid steer real quick, scooped him up, throw him on his trailer and sent him on his way. So, and there was nobody in there for the rest of that day. So I was just sitting there in the skid steer. I think I was playing Angry Birds. So I was like, okay, this is all right. So I'll have it easy the rest of this week. So I go over to the service truck and get a peanut butter sandwich and a Coca-Cola out of my cooler, because I was starting to get hungry. This is around 1:30, 1:40, somewhere around in there. And I just hear this growlish grunt, and I look towards the wood line, and I'm like, well, what the heck was that? Because, I mean, I grew up hunting and fishing. Like, I know the sounds of the woods, and that was something that was off. This is a growlish grunt. And I was like, okay. So I'm scanning around the wood line. I don't see anything. Well, I go to take a bite out of my sandwich and I hear it again. And I'm like, well, this is weird. And I looked up and there was like a cliff face, and I seen something moving through the brush along the cliff face. And I was like, well, this is a bear. And I just kept looking at this thing, and I was like, this is that bear. And I remember looking down and I looked back up, but when I looked back down and I looked back up the second time, that's when I seen it. It was leaning out and looking at me. And I was like, this is not a bear. This is a Bigfoot. These things are real. People aren't crazy. And I locked eyes on this thing. And it was looking at me and I was looking at it. And the only thing I knew of to do was to take a picture, because as sure as I'd have tried to take a video of it, it would have been gone. So I just pulled my phone out. I had a brand new iPhone 8 Plus at the time. And I took a picture of it. I had like 70-something% battery and the phone just completely shut off. And this thing is still up there. It's looking at me. I mean, if that thing wanted to, it could have came down there and got me. But after that, looking back and forth at each other, it just turned around and went up into the mountains. And I jumped in the truck, plugged up the phone, and I was hoping and praying it would come back on. About 20, 30 minutes later, it did come back on, and I was looking, and sure enough, I had the picture of it. And it's up on this cliff face, and he's leaning out around the tree looking at me, and I just couldn't believe it. But then that evening, that's when they started hollering. And the phone was wigging out, so I couldn't record video. The phone to this day still doesn't work properly, but I pulled up the voice memos to record the audio, and it was unlike anything I have ever heard. I know it wasn't elk or anything like that, and that was an eye-opener for me, just to hear the sheer power behind those vocalizations. And then Thursday came around. I go back out there and looking around. I didn't have anybody there either that day. So I'm looking around. I find a trackway. From where this creature was, it came down into that area where I was working at. And I'm 6'6". And the stride between those tracks, I couldn't even do. Like, I found a whole trackway. I got photo and videos of the tracks. This thing jumped, it came across the creek bed into that sawmill area. And I was like, this thing's huge. Like, I couldn't stand a chance.
You can see how we've been in here working around. Okay. So here's the first one. Somehow is walking through here. Then there's another one right there. And then there's another one right here. You kind of see way down. There's another one there, and the other one was back there. So it went doom, doom, boom. And then there's...
So that evening they started hollering again. I got 2 audio recordings that night, and they were about 15 minutes apart. And I actually just recently had a spectral analysis done of the vocalizations. They range from 250 hertz all the way up to 2,000 hertz. And I mean, that's far out of the range of a person or anything like that. And so I remember as I was leaving that place on a Friday, I stopped by a drive-in diner called Robo's, and I was talking to some old timers there, and I just struck up conversation at first. And I was like, y'all ever seen or heard anything weird up here? And they're like, well, what did you see or hear? And I said this, and I showed them the picture of it. I showed them the video and the pictures of the tracks, and I let them listen to the sounds, and all of them got quiet. And then I remember distinctly one of them looked at me and said, well, that's a devil monkey. And I said, so that's a Bigfoot? And they're like, yeah, devil monkey, Bigfoot, wood booger, it's all the same thing. And I was like, that's the only validation I need. So I remember distinctly coming home and like I was telling everybody about it. I was like, I telling my mom and dad and grandparents, everybody. And they're like, oh, well, you didn't see that. I showed them the picture. I showed them the video of the tracks, photos of the tracks, and let them listen to the audio. They was telling me anything other than what it was. And to this day, I still have not talked to my parents or anybody like that. Like I lost a lot of friends because I had that experience.
Like your relationship fell apart because of it?
Yep.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
That's no good.
Yeah. It sucks, man. And then like for 3 years after that, I just stopped hunting and fishing and I was like, you know what? I got to overcome this fear of these things. So I went out on Thanksgiving Day this last year and went deer hunting again. I was like, you know what? I can do this. I can go out in the woods and try to find answers for my questions. And sure enough, December 7th, that day, it happened. And
you talk about the cemetery?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And then a week later, December 14th, that's when I had my second encounter, and it was in Cosby.
Mm.
Yeah, I was surrounded by 3 of them. I didn't see
Pause. We're not going to get that far into it yet because I want to go back to your initial encounter.
Okay.
Because I don't have my notes in front of me, so I got to do this off memory. So the first experience at the work site, you said you took pictures, and I think I remember seeing the pictures. That's what you sent me, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't remember the trackway. Did you send me those?
I believe I did.
Okay.
Yes. I think I sent it to your email, I think.
And audio too. Like
Yep.
we'll go through that before you leave, and so just to make sure that we have it all, because I'd like to be able to share it with people on YouTube. But so you're up there, you have that experience, and when you left the job site before you ran into the old timers, was it in your head that this is a Bigfoot? Like you were mind made up kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. I knew it wasn't a bear because the way it moved, like it had its arm wrapped around the tree and it was leaning out looking at me. Mm-hmm. I mean, it may have been 65, 70 yards away, but I could still tell that thing had its arm wrapped around the tree and was leaning out looking at me. Now, there's a lot of debate. People saying, oh, well, that's a dog man, because in the picture, it almost looks like it has ears, but I remember distinctly not seeing ears. I remember just seeing a Bigfoot.
How far did you have to zoom in with the phone?
I zoomed in as much as I could and then took the picture. Like I know for certain it was about 65, 70 yards away.
Mm. Yeah, I remember seeing the picture, and I could tell you were zooming in because of the pixelation. And so knowing it was an iPhone 8 and you're zooming in, the iPhone 8 was like, I think I only had like one camera on it. So it's not like it was a Sony, camera meant for zoom and all that stuff. And so how large of the stride and the prints would you estimate they'd be? I'm assuming you didn't measure them.
I didn't even think nothing about it because it was the last thing on my mind. I was like, this is really happening. But I put my foot next to it for scale, and I wear a size 12, and they're every bit about 3 or 4 inches longer than my boot.
Yeah, that'd be bare feet too. And it was nice and wide too.
Yeah, they were probably, I'd say every bit about 10 inches across. Every bit of it. Yeah, they were huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And what about the stride would you estimate?
Well, I'm 6'6", and when I tried to step it off, I still probably lacked about 1 foot to 2 foot from being from track to track.
So it was probably walking, not running. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is. Like it made me feel puny.
So from the time that happened to the time that you and Glenn connect is 3-year period? Mm-hmm. You stop hunting what were you doing in that time, though, when it comes to the topic? Were you just not thinking about it, trying to ignore it? What?
I was ignoring it, because facing ridicule from my family and what I thought was friends, and it was hard. I mean, I never did. I just opened up to my wife about it like after Thanksgiving. So it was very hard to like kind of come out about it, but she believes me, and so that's the only thing that I can ask for, and the biggest thing for me is leaving behind a legacy for my kids whenever they grow up, because they deserve to know what's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think the information that people get is crucial to their survival when it comes to running around this area. Especially people who maybe come on vacation, because up in that area, I mean, it's not far from Gatlinburg, and you drive, like I drive usually through Townsend to get up to Gatlinburg. You take some of these side mountain roads and you see people parking off the side of the road, going in the woods. You know when there's a bear, because everybody stops and they're just taking pictures. Mm-hmm. And it's like the bear is like the last thing you need to worry about out there.
Exactly right. Absolutely. Yes. I learned that day that there is a lot more in the world than what's actually led on to be. Mm-hmm. And I've since then had that I can confirm 3 more sightings in Cosby.
Yeah. So that's where this cemetery is, in Cosby. And so you come out and talk to your wife about the Bigfoot stuff around Thanksgiving, and then just a few weeks later, did you talk to your wife about the Bigfoot experience before or after you connected with him?
It was before I connected with Glenn.
So talking to your wife, did it give you like this like almost like psychological green light to start going into it because you at least had your wife on your side?
Yes, absolutely. And it was the only thing that I needed. I just needed a green light from her, and I haven't stopped since.
I got you. So you're less than a year into the actual going out hunting for him. You run into this clown, and he directs you to a cemetery. He says, "But I'm not going."
Nope, not me, man. But I do want to say that when I heard the story and read the story about the initial story that led me to start focusing on this place, the guy, he did say that the cemetery was beside Cosby Creek. So that's what I was focusing on, was Cosby Creek, and then the cemeteries that were with it, and then the campgrounds that were adjacent within the area. So that's and you mentioned a legacy, and one thing that it does is make people aware, because there's people that go missing in the Smoky Mountains, and it's like this anomaly, and I remember hearing stories of it was a school that was going out on they were going out on a field trip or whatever, and this girl had to go to the bathroom, and so she left her small group, and she was 50 feet away from them, just over the hill, and she was gone for longer than expected. I'm talking about minutes, and they went over the embankment and she was gone. Like, that's part of I think I heard that on what is that? 411?
Missing 411?
Yeah. And I think that was part of one of those stories. And they never found her. Like, there was no screaming. There was it looked like somebody had struggled. Anything that she had with her was gone with her. And nobody still knows. And there was another guy there's several people that's disappeared up in there. So it's good that you are telling these stories and making people aware, because those mountains are old and they got a lot of stuff in them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you for saying that. They're ancient.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a history to those mountains that I think predates the Cherokee, and at least this area, and I think there's a lot more stories to be told as far as like the true history of what's out there. And so you direct him to the cemetery.
Yeah.
Which, listen, outside of everything else, from where you live to it's a bit of a drive. Mm-hmm. It is a bit of a drive. So I understand. You got to work the next day.
Yeah.
You go out there, and was that your first time going out to investigate anything?
Yes.
Okay. So the first time going out. So, all right. It was nighttime.
No, it was during the day.
It was during the day.
I won't go out at night unless I've got people with me.
That's wise. So you go out there during the day and you don't see with your naked eye, but on the footage you see that stuff. And so let's recap that real quick. You're panning in the cemetery video, and you see at some point you see like a conical head, and it's blonde hair. Is that all you can see? Was it behind bushes or what?
Oh yeah, he was hiding in behind the laurels, and there was a big tree right there, and he was crouched in behind the tree, and he just had his head peeking out. His head was kind of cockeyed like that, and he was just peeking out from around the tree. But you can definitely see these huge black eyes, the nose and the partial mouth, and you can definitely see a conical shaped head.
And that's on video? On video, do you see it moving at all? Or
well, here's the kicker. When I was first walking around in there, I'm showing that area and it's not there. And then it's there.
Interesting. And then you later see in the video, I'm assuming, the figure walking?
Yes.
So you see movement there?
Yes.
And how big was it roughly?
I think it was every bit of 8.5 foot tall, because that area where it was walking was the drop off down to the creek. And there's a tree that was falling over in the video that you can see that it walks under, and its head's about a foot away from that tree. Okay. It's huge.
What was the definition that you saw? Did you see like hair, or was it like almost like a ghostly black shadow figure?
It initially looked like a shadow figure at first, but when it came out from behind the tree and you could see the side profile of it, you can see a huge conical shaped head.
Interesting. Okay. And you said, I think you said it was like just a few seconds in the video you see it?
Yeah. Like 7 seconds.
I'd really like to see it. I'd like to see that video.
I've got it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I want to see the blonde, the beach going Bigfoot, blonde, the bodacious blonde.
That's a crazy. Remember I sent you? I sent it to Glenn first thing. I was up all night that night, man. I'm like, I was texting Glenn. I was like, look at this.
Well, I have a picture that you took because he sent it to me, and we can get into it a little later. The dog man, and that picture, I looked at that and. I've tried looking at the picture and thinking, okay, could this be, the pareidolia aspect? And I'm trying to find where the log is. I'm not seeing it. And what I'm seeing, I mean, I know my brain, is thinking dog man, so maybe it's projecting, but what I'm seeing looks almost identical to other pictures I have of the same thing. Theoretical same thing, whatever this thing is. And the 3 other pictures I have were taken back to back to back. And in that period of time, you actually see the head moving, the eyes change color from like a red to an amber, its mouth opens. And so it looks eerily similar to that. And also, I've had people on the show who will describe their encounter, especially back in the day, because I wasn't the dog man guy back in the day. The show evolves over time, and you get one good episode 335 Dogman story. Now everybody wants to talk to you about Dogman. I'm like, oh, cool. Finally you guys are talking about Dogman. But over the years, I've had people talk to me about their experiences with either Dogman, or they'll call it a hellhound, or a weird looking dog. And I remember, I think it was episode 176 or something like that. I just remember this show art that Alika had drawn for it, and it was like these dogs running through a field. But what he drew is what she described. I think it was a woman, and she basically said they looked like the dogs from Ghostbusters off the roof. The pictures that I have from Middle Tennessee, those 3 pictures, the face looks like that. And when I look at your picture, that's what it reminds me of. And so to say it was a dog man, I don't know. But what I see in that picture that you took, the pictures that Hunter took in Middle Tennessee, and what's been described to me from these hellhound dogs from Ghostbusters, it makes me feel like, okay, canine. Let's settle on a canine looking thing, but they may be very different than Dogman too.
Exactly.
So if we have the Dogman, you can go down that thread of, okay, Dogman, upright walking dog. Now, are we talking about something that was engineered by the government? Are we talking about something interdimensional? Are we talking about a werewolf, a human being who's changing into it through black magic means? But then when you're talking about the 4-legged things that are running around, now granted, Kyle from episode 335, when he first saw it, he didn't say dog man. He said it was the biggest dog he's ever seen out there. He said he didn't recognize a dog as somebody else's hunting dog. So his brain was already saying, this is just a really large dog, nothing crazy, until it stood up. And so there is that aspect of it. But a lot of times people are talking about seeing these things, and I think for I think for the culture, the word dog man gets said, but people might be seeing something that is not what other people are talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like truckers will talk about seeing the hellhound, right? And it's often described as big, giant black dog running down the highway. Truckers talk about seeing, I think a lot of it stems from, I don't know if this is true, but I'm going to say it anyways, like the Eastern Ohio, Western Pennsylvania area. But I also remember there was a guy on Hammerlane Legends, my dad's podcast, that talked about it, and I think he had his experience there. So maybe that's why I'm connecting that dot. But like the point is, people are seeing canine creatures. Beyond that, it could be like 5, 6, whatever I laid out here, 5, 6 different opportunities, options as to what it actually is. But what you captured on picture for your first encounter, hearing the story leading up to it gives the context that people need, because without that context, people still will say, just prepare you for that.
Oh,
like
they're
going to be like, oh, it's a blob squatch, right?
Yeah,
but when you take the idea that what you see in the picture, there definitely seems to be something leaning out, and then combine that with iPhone 8 zoomed in all the way. And that's why people are saying it might be a dog man, because they're not taking account for the pixelation that takes effect.
That's absolutely right.
And you have to take, you see that, but you also have to take the eyewitness testimony, which is, this is what I saw, right? So when it comes to the cemetery, is it something that when you look at that the face with the blonde hair, is it are you squinting to see this?
Oh, no, you don't have to squint to see this.
Okay.
No.
Wow, interesting. I want to see it because I've heard of blonde Bigfoot before, to be honest with you. And it wasn't my show. It was Wes's show, Sasquatch Chronicles. This was years ago. And anybody who's an OG listener of that show will remember this story, because Wes called me and he's like, listen, man, I've just had the most crazy encounter story I've ever heard. And I'm like, what? And so he tells me, and it's wild because there was cohabitation with these things. And this guy's telling this story about, and I forget all the details, I'll ruin it. But he's telling this story about this old woman that basically was cohabiting with these things. And these things were indoors with them, with her.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And one was described as a blonde Bigfoot.
Not me, man.
And the way the guy described seeing the blonde Bigfoot, it almost, and I feel like he might have even said this, that if it was a human, he might consider. It was like Bigfoot erotica, you know? I was
Man,
just
you
like,
gotta be desperate for that. That's like hairy women.
I mean, he's like he was describing its body, and I was just like, this dude, he's thinking something totally different.
You look at her and say, hey, baby, you need to shave a little bit, maybe?
I mean, that might be the worst formula, because he might have actually done it.
Oh, man. I just can't imagine that. Like, that's...
So, to each his own, I guess. So, but that's the first time I've heard of the blonde, right? And so, and I don't remember where that happened, but then there's this woman, Janice Carter, not Carpenter. I think it's Carter. She's local, and her and I have been talking sparingly, but I'd like to get her on the show. She says she's willing to come in and talk, and her family has a property not far from here, or at least they had, and she grew up with these things on the property, and they cohabited with them, not indoor, but they shared the property. And her story is they had relationship with these things, and there was vocal communication. And so I'm like, this is interesting. I want to hear, and so we're working on that. But there is that legend in this area of, up close personal encounters with these things. Now, I don't know if your blonde Bigfoot is the same one from that story.
Yeah.
But you see the figure moving. Let me ask you about that. Was it something that you're like, is it possible that you're just seeing a shadow of a tree or something like that?
Oh no, this thing is moving from right to left, and you can see it move on the video.
Okay,
it's like it's phasing in and out. Like you can see this blob, and then like it's like phasing in and out, and then it fully manifests into a figure, and it's walking.
So what I'm hearing up to this point is pretty phenomenal in the sense of this. You have a Bigfoot encounter in 2020. You ignore it for 3 years. You come out of your Bigfoot closet, which we've all been there. I have myself, clearly, but it was a traumatizing experience for me because it didn't happen on my own terms. I was forced into it. But that happens. You immediately decide, I'm going to start looking for this. Your first crack out there, you have this experience. Now, it's important to understand it was methodical. It wasn't just random. Let me just go out looking for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
There was a methodical approach to it as like, there's a reason why I'm at this location. You have that experience or interaction on video at least. And then you have, and I think you said 3 more. So like in less than a year. So before we get into your other encounters and how this all unfolds, what do you make of that? You're new at all this. As somebody who has never laid eyes on a Bigfoot personally in person, and I go out and we've had crazy stuff happen on video and stuff like that, right? I think when you're aware of things in your surrounding, it can definitely be easier to attain such things because you're looking.
Yes, absolutely.
But shoot, dude, like, have you ever sat back and thought like, why the heck am I having this kind of interaction?
Well, I don't know if it's in my blood or what, but
I mean, you are tall.
I just go, I probably think I am one, honestly.
Look at that scrawny little Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So what I do is ultimately I just go out there and I have a clear state of mind and I'm always listening, always looking. Sometimes I'll just go out there and sit down for hours and just sit and listen. If it gets dead quiet, but you don't get dead quiet all the time. That's one thing that I understand when people say, oh, it gets dead quiet. It really doesn't all the time. So the second encounter happened December 14th. My wife was actually out with me and
hold on. December 7th, you go out to the cemetery. So a week later? Okay.
Yeah. So my wife was with me this day. We parked right as you get into this place. There's a little parking area you can park at. So we parked there and I told my wife, I said, we're going to hike up and hike back. But for the longest time, I never did take the mountain trail that was above the cemetery. I would just go up and work my way back. I'd do the little point, I think it's like 0.8 mile up into that place. And we were walking up and on our way back out, my wife stopped. She says, look at that. And I'm like, what? She said, those trees, they look like something out of a movie because the sticks were broken and sticking up out of the ground. I was like, all right. I said, you standing right here? I said, I'm going to walk over and look. I walked over there. And as I'm looking at that, I noticed there was 2 trees laying on the ground like this. And the leaves in between the trees were matted down like something had been laying there. Well, the logical thing I done was step it off and it was 8.5 feet. And I'm like, well, there ain't no black bear that big, I don't think. I was like, well, this is probably a Bigfoot. But by that time, I heard something moving in front of me. I hollered at my wife. I said, stand right there. I said, there's something moving over here. I said, it's probably a bear, which I wasn't going to tell her it was probably a Bigfoot. I didn't know, honestly. That's all I thought it was a bear. And I'm walking back into that area and I've come across this huge game trail. Like the trees up higher are snapped off. Like it's a huge game trail. Like I don't even think it's from elk because I found some elk sign in that area. So I'm standing in the middle of this trail and I just have this feeling I need to look to my right. So I stopped and I turned and I seen it, reddish brown. It stepped in behind the tree. This thing was probably about 30 yards away from me. And I was like, holy crap. Well, it steps out from behind the tree and it's looking straight at me like this. And it crouches down in behind this bush. And it peeks its head out of the bush to look at me. It's reddish brown. He's got gray skin. He's got black eyes. He's got a big frumpy looking nose. And I'm locking eyes with this thing probably about 30 seconds to a minute. All of a sudden, to my left, there was a loud pop and a smack of a branch breaking. And then right behind me, there was stomping in place, just doof, 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 just like it was stomping in place. I don't know if it was running at me or what, but I think it was just stomping in place. But I know one thing. I got out of there and I told my wife, I said, we need to go now. I was like, I've pissed them off. But here's the kicker. I had my gun on me that day and I had it on my right-hand side. So when I turned and I locked eyes on that one, my pistol was on the right-hand side and I had one to my left and I had one behind me. And I didn't have one in the direction of my pistol. So there was 3 of them right there around me.
So you think that they saw the pistol and were maneuvering around it?
That's what I think.
Do you think, what kind of, first of all, this is just a practical question. What kind of pistol you have out there?
Not the right one.
Okay, you got to get the right one. Get a 10 millimeter at least.
Well,
Okay.
I got a 9.
Okay, 9's going to make it angrier. But if it's up close, aim for the eye. That's what I'll say. Okay? Because I'm not.
I've heard that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the softest spot. I mean, you think like these things are so huge, just their bone structure itself is like body armor.
Yeah.
Well, did you hear the story about the Daniel Boone incident? Did you ever hear his?
Probably. Oh, Daniel
him and his
Boone's.
son?
Yeah.
And they shot it and killed
Tell
it.
the story.
Okay, so they were somewhere and some Indians had stole a couple horses of theirs. So Daniel Boone and his son went after him, started tracking him. And long story short, they got up to some place in the Ohio River, and then they noticed that the horse trail led into, and they could see they were not far behind these guys because they had built fires and different things, on their way out. So this was several days they were tracking them. And so finally they tracked it into a big old huge Indian reservation or whatever, camp. And so they decided to turn back because they're not going to go in there and, because it was still a hostile situation back then. And him and his son got separated. And I forget how that happened, but all of a sudden he heard his son screaming. And he got within 100 yards or 150 yards and he could see it. It was this massive, he called it a massive hairy man that was picking his son up and was body slamming him and had body slammed him twice already. So he was afraid, obviously, that his son was going to die. And he had a bead on him, but he was afraid he was going to miss. But he knew if it picked him up one more time, if he was alive, he wasn't going to be after that because it was just rocking him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he pulled the trigger, and I think he shot it. No, he pulled the trigger and he hit it one time. He hit it in the eye and dropped it. Well, his son was really messed up, and finally his son came to, and so they were because it was dead, and so they were basically autopsying this thing. And if he would have shot it in the chest, there's no way that a bullet would have pierced the chest because he said it was surrounded by bone, this real thick bone cavity. And the one place that it was vulnerable was in the eye. And that's where he killed it. And it's a story that he had told several times.
Yeah. And Trucker Joe Barger, this isn't Bigfoot, it's Dogman, but his story, he'll be here in studio at some point, hopefully before the end of the year, to tell his story. But a lot of people have heard his story. He came to me and another guy at a conference and told us the story, and then it just spread like wildfire. And I told Joe, I was like, listen, Joe, everybody else had you on their show. So when I have you on my show, I want you in person. That way it at least provides something unique. But long story short, his story is that this thing came up on the side of his tractor trailer, and it was looking in the cab, and he pulled up, I think it was a 45 Colt, pulls it up, aims, shoots it in the eye, drops it. And so I believe, this is just my theories because I don't have any experience killing one yet, that if you hit it in the eye, it will drop it, Dogman, Bigfoot. But I think that they're just so massive and their bone structure is so dense that a 9 in the chest, in the head, it's just gonna make it mad.
Yeah.
It's like getting shot with a BB gun, you know? So, or maybe even the back of the mouth, like if it's on top of you kind of thing, but I'm very pro dropping one. And so that's just how I think about things when I'm driving home, and I'm like, how am I going to do it when it happens? But so you're out there, you have the gun, they see it, one in front, one behind, one on the side. So you only saw the one in front,
yes,
which was the reddish brown hair, right?
Yes.
How do you know there was two other ones?
I heard the branch break. There was a branch break to my left. It was like and then right behind me, there was just stomping. Like it was, I don't know if it was stomping or if it was running towards me, but I remember distinctly hearing footsteps.
So, okay. So you don't know if it was actually moving or just stomping.
Yeah.
Interesting. So definitely it was something there, and that was beside you. What about the one behind you?
That's the one that was stomping.
That's the one that was behind.
The one to my left broke the branch.
Gotcha. So, and your exit was to stage right?
Yep.
Okay.
Head back to the trail in the direction of the trail.
It could have been almost that they were like, okay, time for you to move back in the direction you
That's
came
what
from.
I was wondering. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Or I think they were toying with me, honestly. The more I think about it, I'm like, they were just testing me to see what I would do.
And I wonder, like, so he had a Bigfoot encounter in 2020, and that was a drawn out encounter from the time that you saw the first footprint to days later seeing the Bigfoot to having it walk down through the area. It's a drawn out encounter, right?
Yeah.
And this is woo woo, but I don't know if I am, but I'm gunning for the king of woo woo spot. So like, if there's ever a vote online, please guys vote me for the king of woo woo. But like, I feel like there can be this marker kind of thing. Like people can be marked, and that's the only way I can make sense. Not the only way I'd say, but like, I mean, gosh, like you have that encounter, you quit hunting from it. So now you're taking yourself out of the environment. Years later, you open up about it, you talk about it, you jump in, and all of a sudden when you start putting yourself back in the environment, it picks up right where it left off 3 years ago.
Yep. And it ain't stopped.
And I do believe that it is a bloodline issue. I mean, I think most people, if they go back and they research family members, somewhere there was, I don't know if it was generally witchcraft or I don't know what it is, but I think it's connected to the supernatural. You've got somebody in your family that is connected with that, because when I first, and trust me when I say this, I wish that Bigfoot was not real. I wish that Dogman was not real. I was hoping and with everything in me that I would never see anything, that I would never have any kind of experience. But my first time went up to, and I love Smoky Mountains. I do. I'd go back in forever by myself. But when I went up there specifically to research this, and then after I had the experience that I had, I looked at the woods after that completely different, because I thought, okay, these people ain't absolutely crazy. And to go back and say, well, I wish I didn't know anything. Yeah. So and like you say, why is there certain people that can go in and automatically it just starts, it starts clicking. Mm-hmm. I do believe it's a bloodline issue. I've not really went in and done a whole lot of diving into that. But all the stories that I've read and and listened to, a lot of these people have issues at their house, through spiritual issues at their house. They're seeing things in their home, whether it's shadow people or whether it's, and then all of a sudden this ties in with these entities that they're seeing. I don't think Bigfoot's a monkey, just a big, hybrid monkey. I think it's a, and I know the line's divided on that. Mm-hmm. I believe they're way much more than that. I think that they're in a spiritual realm.
Well, I'm learning. I recently started doing more speaking engagements, and I'm interacting with people more. And I'm learning that even people who are more of the scientific approach are starting to leave room for just the what if factor. Mm-hmm. Like
and they need to.
I hung out with in Utah. I hung out with Maria Mayer, Russell Accord, a lot of people that. Like, let's just leave it with those two. So, because people know them. If you don't know who I'm talking about by the name, Russell was on the show not too long ago. Maria is his one of his co-hosts on Expedition Bigfoot. That's their show. Mm-hmm. So, Maria is a doctorate. She's a scientist. She does work for National Geographic. She's traveled the world. And Russ is former military. Just
he's a boss.
He's a boss. Yeah, it's physical kind of thing, right? when I talk with them, I talked with Russell here. People can go back and listen to that conversation. I went down the road of the woo and Dogman and things, and he didn't shut it down at like he did say, I don't believe that kind of thing, but like he didn't shut it down as an impossibility. And I forget what was said, but at one point he said he kind of like he was sitting in your chair. He kind of looked off to stage left, and he just kind of was quiet for a second. He's like, if you ask me that question a week from now, I'll have an answer. I need time to think about it. But what if there's physical, and you're talking to a retired truck driver, I'm not a science. You run around as a scientist. I don't do that. Like, what if when they come here to this realm, they become more physical than they would have been in another realm where the physics are different there?
Why would they take on the shape of a Bigfoot though?
What if that's what they are in the other realm? It's just they exist different, not as a physical form, Bigfoot, almost like a spirit body versus a physical body. Is it possible that if there was an interdimensional thing, could it be that it has different properties in different dimensions? Does it make sense?
You're going to drive me to start drinking, aren't you?
No, man. I'm just trying to,
No,
I'm just having fun. Like,
no. I
love this stuff.
I do too, because I like the mind-bending questions that I've always been satisfied with walking away from something saying that I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I can process it. And maybe, okay, here's a segue. You ever get in an argument with somebody and then 2 days later, you're like, oh, if I'd have said this, I would have been such a good zinger.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like what we're having the conversation right now. I have to process things for a while. And it's like, okay, I can wrap my head around this piece of it and this piece of it. I should have asked Tony this, and maybe he would have had a clarification for me, because I'll take the information you've given me and I'll think about it and I'll process it. And so basically you're saying that in another dimension, it's Bigfoot. And if it comes to this dimension, it can be either one. It could be invisible, or it can take on the form of Bigfoot and be seen or not be seen.
That's one of my theories. One of my theories.
All right.
It was just like one of those things where he was openly saying, I need to think about that, right? Which is not saying that's impossible.
Right,
don't talk about it, right?
Exactly right.
And Marae is the same way. Like, she's very scientific, but it was like, she's like, I don't want to say it's impossible. Until I can actually have proof of it, and I'm just like, who needs proof? Like, but like, I mean, for me, as somebody who is not scientific, but it talks to a lot of people, that's how I got here. If anybody were to hear from episode 1 to now, you would hear the transition of my mindset along the way. And so that it's a unique situation that I sit in. So you mentioned about the bloodline thing. The way you're talking about it almost sounds like the way I would describe it is family history, but there is a bloodline thing too, where, and I'll ask you this, and I'll even ask you this. Do either one of you know your blood type?
Oh, I have no idea.
It's okay. I didn't until like a week ago when I asked.
Mine's the rare one.
RH negative?
Yeah.
Okay. So RH negative, there's a much larger percent of people who have RH negative who have these kind of experiences. Joel, my buddy Joel, laid out some percentages, and I think it was like 15% of the world is RH negative, and of that 15%, 90% of them have weird, crazy stuff happen to them.
Yeah, I've done some deep dives on RH negative blood types.
Wait, you're RH negative?
Yeah. So the thought pattern is on an RH negative blood type is that is a remnant of a Nephilim blood type. And most people that have RH negative blood types have a high proclivity for UFO activity, paranormal activity, being able to see interdimensionally, astral project. All of that happens generally with most people that are RH negative. So that is a big part of being RH negative, because there's so little people that are.
Yeah.
And when people that were actually doing these deep researches on that actual blood type, then it was found that these people were having these experiences left and right. So,
really?
Yeah. Also, back to your Rh negative, which is fascinating. 15% of people in the world have that. That's it. And what's really crazy is in the Basque region, it's almost like 40 to 50% of people in that region actually have that Rh negative, and they speak a dialect that no one understands what it is. So that dialect is like some sort of like Indo-European dialect. Yeah. And they don't know what the derivative is from. Now, the thought pattern is it could be from some sort of Enochian language or some sort of angelic language from these Nephilim from the past. Now, it's the Rh negative, man, I'm telling you, I've done some deep dives on this, and I've had so many people reach out to me since I started talking about it over the past year saying, I'm Rh negative. I'm having all this weird stuff happen to me. And it's constantly happening, and I'm just connected somehow to this other realm. And I'm seeing dogmen, I'm seeing Bigfoot, I'm seeing gray aliens, I'm seeing all these things. I'm almost wondering if there is some validity to this Rh negative factor that you are of some sort of Nephilim bloodline. Now, the thought pattern is that these high-ranking elites, these royal families are all Rh negative. That's why they stay interbreeding within, because they want to keep that strong Rh negative bloodline going. Mm-hmm. But people, at least 15% of the world is Rh negative. And I'm telling you, a super high percentage of that, almost in the 90 percentile, or at least the guys, people coming forward are having these experiences. That's like you're having.
You're special.
Well, I mean, dating back to Virginia mountains.
Well, you're talking about, a dog man versus a hellhound. Mm-hmm. Okay. We all know the Robert Johnson story about hellhounds on my trail. I think he wrote that from experience. Mm. But when I saw that dog, that black dog that was with that old man, okay, so at 9 years old, I'm over 4 feet tall, right? My eyes was coming even with the back of that dog.
That's a big dog.
That's a big
dog. And it wasn't like it looked like a Doberman pinscher, black, and its eyes were just marble black, but it was extremely wide, very muscular, almost like if you would imagine the way a bulldog is built, but have the head of a Doberman. And, with all the crap that was coming out of its mouth, that's what I saw. I mean, it wasn't a normal sized dog. So, I'm just reverting back to that. And yeah, so I didn't even know that about the blood type. I had no clue about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it'd be good for you to try to figure that out.
I'll have to figure that out.
Maybe mom, if I'll start talking to your mom first. And
we're brothers from a different mother, man.
I knew y'all rednecks down here were a little different.
Tree don't split that much.
Yeah. Oh man, I love living here with you guys. Like the southern people are just so much more fun than up north. It's great. Okay, so you have that experience with your wife, and did you tell your wife immediately what happened?
Oh, I came running out of the woods.
Okay.
Yeah, she knew something was up because I was running. I told her, I said, there's 3 of them. I said,
turn the truck on! Turn the truck on!
Yeah, I said, we were nowhere near the vehicle. We were still like half a mile away. And like we were booking. She's like, you got to wait on me. I was like, no. I said, come on. But
the fastest survives.
Yeah, exactly. So but the strangest thing that I can remember, when I was looking into its eyes, it was almost like there was a soul or humanness to it, so to speak. But before, I used to think it was Gigantopithecus. And then I was like, after that, I was like, there's something more at hand here. And this is something recently new to me. My buddy Bo Kennedy, I already
know where you're going. If you're talking about Bo, I already know where you're going.
He was telling me that he was talking to this woman and she had a relationship with Bigfoot, and it would visit her in its physical form and as an orb, and it would communicate with her telepathically, and it told her that it was an Eliud. Mm-hmm. And that's the children of the Nephilim. And it was telling her that the Bible was wrong and all this stuff. But before I dug into all the woo side of that stuff, like I was firm that it was Gigantopithecus, and then after I had that second encounter, I was like, you know what? There's something more at hand here. So I went looking in the Bible for answers. I read about Cain.
Why? The Nephilim said it was all wrong. You can always trust the Nephilim, right?
Right.
Before you go any further, let me just pause on that. That's not a detail to miss. Like, so Bo's talking to this lady, and she's having interactions with a paranormal Bigfoot, where it is orb and Bigfoot calling itself Eliud, which is the children of the Nephilim. And the children of the Nephilim is saying, this paranormal thing is saying, oh, by the way, the Bible's wrong. Where the Bible talks about the Nephilim.
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, all right. So it's like basically like the bank robber saying, I didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly right. And I looked into the scripture. I thought maybe it was Cain. Because Cain was cursed to be a restless wanderer of the earth, and then Esau, because the red-headed giant or whatever, and then
Esau, yeah,
and then my buddy Justin, he's a big guru. You probably know him.
Who?
Justin. From the Prometheus.
Oh,
lens.
Justin Brown. Yeah. He was down here too.
Yeah, I took him out last Sunday, and we went out hiking. But he's pretty firm on that they're descendants of Esau. So I mean, I used to think they were an ape, but I mean, I completely changed my mind on that.
Yeah, I'm open to all of it. I really am. Like even. Like I'm woo-woo guy, right? And people, their follow-up with that is, well, how do you plan on shooting it? Because I think that the longer they're in this dimension, the more physical they are.
Exactly, absolutely.
And so if it looks physical, give it a crack. Why not?
It never hurt. I mean,
but yeah, I mean, like there's the physical, there's the interdimensional aspect, there's the ancient aspect of it. There's just so many different ways to look at it. And as somebody who's never seen it, I'm open to all suggestions.
Yeah.
Because I don't really have an emotional tie to these topics. I'm just very curious about them, and I will celebrate the day that it actually is proven one way or another, because it's just like, all right, now we got something to talk about.
Well, that's fair enough. And like they just came out with like the UFO disclosure. It's like it's time for cryptids now. Like y'all already came out about UFOs.
I'll tell you, man, cryptid is a whole other bag of worms that it's even harder to unpack. So I spent some time with I'm not going to drop the name because I don't know if he is actually somebody who's really out in the public. But last week I spent some time with a guy who was inside the government orchestrating the disclosure side of that stuff.
Oh,
and he gave me he shared with us the methodology and the thought process behind why he did what he did and how he did it. And that's with things in the sky. You start talking about disclosure with things that theoretically are roaming the ground, our level, and that can come up to your house at night in the dark. Like, yeah, aliens can, right? But their disclosure, the way they've been doing it, it lets people go to work the next day. Like, if you start disclosing that these creatures are on the ground roaming, you can't control it, and we don't know. Imagine the similar disclosure where it's like, we don't know. Here's what we know, and they talk in a cryptic way, like with aliens and UFOs, where it's like, I think they're saying they're interdimensional, but they're not saying it. Why are they not saying it?
Yeah, exactly.
If you start talking about the cryptic way with cryptids, I think there's a stronger likelihood people are not going to come out of their house.
Yeah, exactly.
You think about this. So if they say, okay, we have these all over the national parks, it's true, we've got them. What's it going to do to the monetary aspect? Of
tourism would lose money.
Would be like shot.
Yeah, Gatlinburg, Pigeon.
Well, then you have guys like us. Then you'd have guys like us going out there looking for them.
But guys like you.
Well,
I'll just
all right, couch potato.
You would go out, but your wife forbids it.
Yeah, I would go out, but I just when you feel that you're sort of like a magnet with this kind of stuff, it's like, oh man, I know something bad's going to happen.
Yeah. Just look back to your episode. So. Okay. What were we talking about? I forget where we were going with that. But
your buddy.
Your buddy talking about disclosure.
He's not my buddy. I met him. So
acquaintance.
Is that the Southern way of acquaintance?
Yeah.
Okay. We're an acquaintance. It's my buddy.
Yeah, it's your buddy.
It's my buddy. So I think there's that aspect of it that's just like, you got to be careful and yeah, because I mean, I think everybody at this table. And a lot of people listen are probably in a similar mindset that, these things are out there. There's something going on, right?
Yeah.
But imagine you go from us, this group of people, and the weirdos that's how the world look. I mean, look at your family, right? So they're like, my son's lost his mind. You take those people and inform them. They're not wired like us. We're crazy. Like they're not wired like us.
Right.
So you give them this information, and you're talking about a transformation in the psychology of people nationwide. And that is something you gotta be thinking about. You gotta be thinking about you talk about, like you guys mentioned about the economic aspect of this, but like the social aspect of this, I mean, people aren't going to national parks anymore. People aren't going to work anymore.
Right. Exactly.
Like you talk about the place you were working at, that job site shut down. You know, you start saying that these creatures are out there and they're coming in close to people and stuff. There's going to be a big chunk of people. And then there's also the social aspect of, okay, well, I got to go to work, so I'm going to be carrying my gun with me. And all of a sudden they see, you know, their coworker who's 6'8" and taking a leak behind a tree, and they're like, oh my gosh, and they're pop, you know, there's so much stuff, you know, there's so much stuff. Yeah. So anyways, so that was your third encounter?
The second.
That was, well, you had the one in 3 years ago, then you had the one in the graveyard I'm counting as an encounter, and then there was the one with your wife.
Oh, well, I mean, that second one, I wouldn't count that.
You got to count that as an encounter. Just because you didn't see it in person doesn't mean that.
Well, I mean, I don't technically count that.
Okay.
I mean, just because it was there and I didn't see it, I mean, I can't say for certain, you know, but I know it's in the picture.
So there's what, one or two other times then?
Yep.
What, one or two?
Two.
Two? All right, so take us to the second one.
So January 7th, I was out there and I invited some buddies of mine up from North Carolina. NCI, North Carolina Investigates. My buddies, Robert Effler and George Lunsford. So we go out there and I'm showing them the area. I mean, I had just been in there for a month. And, you know, I was showing them some of the structures and stuff that I had found, like arches and X's and other things like that. I even found a teepee. There's a teepee out there, because the funny thing about that teepee, when I went in there, it wasn't there. And when Glenn came in, it was there. Like we just missed each other, and like it was very strange. But so we're going around in this area, we're walking around and looking, and we're finding some signs, like there's fresh tree breaks where they're twisted and broken. You know, it takes something with hands to twist a tree and break it. So we're walking around looking, and we found dogman tracks, 7 inches long, 4 inches across. I mean, these huge canine tracks. We had to have been at least 15 minutes behind this thing, because that when we were out there that day, it was sleeting and raining on us. Like the tracks were fresh, so we were right on it. And we were keeping up with that and just looking around. And here's a little blooper for you. So my bright idea was there was this tree and then there was a dark spot on it. Well, what did I do? I got down there right in that thing and I got right up into it and I sniffed it. And let me tell you, that was the most god-awful smell. I was gagging and carrying on. I don't know if it was pee or what, but it was a horrible smell. And Robert and George were laughing at me. Like, I don't know why I had the idea to lean down there and smell it, but it's just a memories, man. Like that day is a day I'll never forget with them. So we were on our way back out. So I nudged George on the shoulder. I said, let's go down this little holler right here. We'll work our way around and we'll cut down through this little valley and come up. He's like, all right. So we had walkies and we were in walkie contact with Robert, and Robert's wife was with us too. So we went down in that holler, and Robert and his wife stayed on the main trail. And me and George are working our way through there. We're going through them laurels, and the laurels are so thick in that place. It's unbelievable. So we're working our way around, and we get down in the little valley. And I seen something moving out of my peripheral. And I wasn't going to say anything until I was for certain that it moved. Well, it moved. And it moved probably about 4 or 5 feet. And I was like, okay, that's something. I don't know if it's a bear, but I said, I think it's a Bigfoot. You know, it was there, and it was moving pretty quick. So I stopped dead in my tracks. I said, George, there he is. He said, Harley, that's a shadow. I said, George, that's a Bigfoot. He said, Harley, that's a shadow. I said, stand right here. I said, I'm going to walk towards it. I didn't even step 10, 15 feet. And I stepped on this branch, and it sounded like a shotgun going off. This Bigfoot reaches and grabs a hold of the tree and leans down to look at me, because he couldn't see me because I was out of his field of view. And then George seen it, and he said, oh, blank. And next thing I know, George was running past me, and the Bigfoot had done took off. But we got up there to the tree where he was at, and there was some dirt right at the base of the tree, and you could see the 3 perfect toes in the middle and a slight pinky toe and a slight big toe right there from where he was standing. And we named him Alfalfa. We named the Bigfoot Alfalfa because when it was sleeting and raining on us, his hair was sticking up straight on top of his head like alfalfa off of Little Rascals.
Okay. So this is the first time you're telling a story that there was a witness with you. And he at first saw what you saw and thought it was a shadow.
Yep.
Is that because this was that tall that you couldn't see the head from your vantage point, or what?
Yeah, it looked like a shadow. I mean, at first, but then I seen it move, and then that's when I realized it was probably a Bigfoot. And then George was firm that it was a shadow, and I said, no, it's a Bigfoot. And I walked towards it, and I stepped on that branch, and he braced himself on the tree to look for me because he couldn't see me. And then he leaned out, and George got a real good look at him when he leaned out.
And George, when you said George ran, did he run towards it or away from it?
Oh, he ran towards it.
All right.
He ran past me. He ran past me.
You're shaking your head. No, I'm like, yeah, that's good.
And I was like, and I was trying to process everything. So I'm there, and I'm like,
George. I like George a lot.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, so I guess we're chasing this thing. And we get up there, and we see the track right there at the tree. And then right there in the laurels, there's like a big funnel. Like there's been movement through that area. And we're going through that, and it looked a lot. It didn't look as thick as what it was, but when we got in there, you couldn't see 2 or 3 foot around you. That place was so thick, and how he moved through that, we'll never know. But it was the weirdest thing was when he took off, we never heard him. But Robert radioed over to us. He said, "What in the world are y'all stirred up?" And Robert's just he's an old holler boy from North Carolina, and and he's like, "What in the world are y'all stirred up?" He sounded like a dang on bulldozer running through the woods. And I was like, "It's a Bigfoot. We jumped it." And George was like, yeah, I seen it. It was a Bigfoot. And we went through that laurel patch, and we ended up getting back on the trail. I mean, we don't know what happened after that, but Robert said that he heard it moving through the woods. He said it sounded like a bulldozer.
So Robert heard it from where he was at?
Yeah, he heard him running.
Wow.
And he said about how he knew something was coming was because there was about 4 or 5 crows came flying out of the woods.
Okay, so you and George didn't hear it moving.
Yep.
Robert heard it moving.
Yep.
That is where I go woo-woo on this now. Because
it's almost like they take your perception away from you, so to speak.
Snatch that away from you for a second. So I think when people have encounters at times, not always, depends on where you're at, but I think at times people have encounters. How do I say this without sounding too crazy? If you're a new listener, I promise you I'm not too crazy. I'm crazy, but I call it the portal bridge. I've talked about it on the show before, but I think sometimes people like you or anybody out there, sometimes they walk onto the bridge not knowing. And that's where they have the interaction. And so when you are having this interaction and I don't know how else to call it other than the portal bridge, I'm not picturing a bridge,
right?
But like
when you have this sphere, so to speak.
Yeah, but it's a meeting ground. It's you're not somewhere else. You are here. It's the bridge between different places. And when they're on the bridge and you stumble onto the bridge and you have this interaction, sometimes there are signs that point to the evidence or proof of that, which is what you just shared. The environment changes when you go into these portals. We had Trey Hudson on the show talking about this cubed portal. We're going to be actually working the area. But him and his team had a cubed portal appear, I believe, on thermal camera. He directed 2 of his team members towards it. They actually walked into it. When they walked into it, the environment changed around them. Both those guys have since passed away.
Radiation.
Different illnesses. But they talk about the environment changing. And that's not an uncommon thing. There's another guy that after I came out with episode 512, the Desert Portal Death Cult episode, there was somebody who contacted me saying that he had an experience in Joshua Tree where he went hiking on a weekend because his mom had just passed away and he disappeared. The news coverage of him was that they were looking for him. They couldn't find him. He reappeared like 4 days later in the place that they already had looked. They asked him what happened to you, and he's like, I was here, but I wasn't here. And during his experience, he had black cloaked entities and figures walking up to him, talking to him in a way that he couldn't understand. I still would love to get that guy on the show if he would be willing. So there's this thing where you're here, but you're not here, and the environment changes around you. And so your senses, perceptions change.
Right.
So for me, just a theory on your experience there, it would make sense that you had this interaction and your senses didn't pick up what they should have picked up because you were on this other plane of existence. You were here, but there was things here as well because you were on this like middle meeting ground.
Right. Yeah.
When that thing exits, so say it. For very physical, simplistic terms, there's a hallway, a door on one side, door on the other. You came through this door, he came through this door.
And we're in the middle.
And you're operating around each other. Your senses and perceptions are off. You see it, it books it. It doesn't go through that door that it came through, it went through the door you came through. So when it comes out that door, you don't hear because your perceptions are different. But when it comes out that door into our plane, your partner hears it crashing through the woods because all of a sudden now our attributes and physical nature that we experience here takes on form with that creature. Does that make sense? I know it's really...
It makes sense. It makes sense. Absolutely, yeah.
Honestly, that might be have been the best way I've ever described it, and I still don't know if I did it justice.
You done a great job with that. That was very well explained. Yeah, and that's the best way to really explain how that makes sense.
But I could totally be wrong. So, and that's what I meant earlier when I said I'm open to all suggestions. Like if it is an ancient hominid that has been here longer than us, I'm open to it. I just, with what I hear and experience through my show, and I do marry people's experiences with other people's experiences that have similarities. So like what I just did there came from not totally from, but I used the example of the Desert Portal Death Cult, right? And to draw this picture, that episode had nothing to do with Bigfoot, but there's these interdimensional properties that I'm trying to show how I'm trying to show the world how I think about it. Not that what I think is the right way. So anyways, I find that really interesting that he heard it crashing through the woods when you're the ones that had the interaction.
We never heard him.
So how tall, big would this be?
He was like a 4x8 sheet of plywood. That's the best way to really describe him. He was huge. Huge. I mean, it was every bit of 4 foot at the shoulders.
And you saw it with your own eyes move away. Interesting.
So that...
we both seen him.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense what you just said. Is it when people go into the woods or wherever and they say the woods go quiet, is it they walked into that dimensional bubble? It's not the woods going quiet. It's you walked into a sphere type thing.
You're on the bridge.
And there's a whole new different kind of perception.
So
in that.
Yes, that's according to the Gospel of Tony. Yes, that's what I think.
That makes
right?
sense.
But
it makes sense. Yeah.
Also, this portal bridge, this bubble, I think it moves, and it might move because of whatever is moving within it, or it just might naturally move. It might be something where there's shifts happening, and there has to be certain shifts that have to marry each other up to even have it exist to begin with. I'm going to stay away from that just because I don't know how I'm going to explain that one, but with what you just said, Missing 411, I don't remember if it was in a documentary or a book. I just remember it coming from David Pilates' camp. And I think he might have been the one that suggested this, that when the portal shift, or when you have that experience and everything goes dead quiet, again, I think he suggested, I don't remember, but it's something that I suggest, so take it for what it is. If you notice that shift happen, especially if you're with somebody to do this, but even if you're not, do the best you can, maybe find a tree. If you're with somebody, sit down on the ground, back to back, and stay still until the shift completes itself and the sounds come back. Otherwise, you might be like the guy in Joshua Tree missing for 4 days. And so, or forever. Right. And how many times do we have people in these necks? Is that, did I say it right? The necks, these neck of the woods? No.
Yeah.
I
think what you're saying,
these parts.
I think what you're saying is like, it is extremely eye-opening because I never really thought of it. I mean, I've always thought they were interdimensional beings, right? Mm. But for them to carry that interdimensional effect
properties
within so many feet, and it sort of explains why. Okay, we smelled this really bad odor, and all of a sudden, we stepped over 2 feet and couldn't smell it anymore. Mm-hmm. So, is that the odor that they carry? They can emit within that dimension.
Yeah,
and then when you step outside of it, not only can you not smell it anymore, but you hear all these sounds. But when it gets close to you, mm-hmm. you're subjected to its properties, mm-hmm. and it's full dimensional properties, whether it be smell, hearing, sight, everything.
Yeah.
And that also goes to explain Scott Carpenter's experiences on when he would have the video camera, which is genius, the camera that was facing behind him. And on that trail, it was a silhouette type, image, and you could see it putting its body outside of that. Mm-hmm. So it's within its sphere, mm-hmm. and it comes out of its sphere to our dimension, and you can see it plain as. I mean, you can sort of see the silhouette that it's in. That's its dimension. That's its home. Yeah. That's its safe space, and then it exposes itself. So that just makes so much sense the way you explain it. That's really cool.
Well, just pay me for my thoughts. That's whatever.
I mean, that's an excellent and it would explain so much.
Yeah. So I had an experience not far from here where the smell came in and left. Mm-hmm. I think it happened like 3 or 4 times. And as that happened, I was walking. And so the way I look at it is, one of the ways I look at it is it that this scent came, by the way, it wasn't a windy night. Was it that the scent, whatever was creating the scent was coming in and out at me? Or was I going in and out of this bridge?
Right.
Because then I got sick, and I don't personally, and I know that when people see it, they're going to think otherwise, but I personally don't think that I got sick because of the smell or I got zapped. I literally had a respiratory infection. I was swallowing just mucus the entire night. And so I got sick to my stomach, and I hunkered down and stopped. And then what happened when I stopped, something translucent charged me. Mm. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it was
like a predator.
Yeah, it was bipedal, and it charged us, and it ran right up on us. And to the point, I think this is the first time I ever had to pull my gun out. Like, I pulled my gun out because I thought this thing was going to blow through me, and I stepped to the side, and it stops right off the trail. And so, but we had those things leading up to that moment. And so they're really, this is all theoretical stuff.
Yeah.
But nobody else out there in the normie world is even going to think about this stuff.
No.
So that's why, I'm okay going down these different branches.
They want people to stay in the world as we know it, not as the world being bigger than what it actually is.
Yeah.
It's like, on my farm, I got about 20, 25 acres of really thick woods. And I was doing some yard work and everything, and I was going down this road that goes down into my woods, and I could smell rotten flesh, like something had died. Mm-hmm. And you could walk 2 feet or 3 feet, and you wouldn't smell it anymore. And then you could come back, and you'd smell this putrid, rotten flesh smell. And so I went off the road over into the, where the leaves and stuff were, and I'm looking for something that maybe was decaying, that had died. I didn't find anything. But the whole time that I was standing there, it's like I was standing right on top of it.
Yep, I've had that happen.
And then
before.
I walked back out on the road. I couldn't smell it anymore. And so that sort of goes in line with what we're saying. It's like, was something standing there? And that was right after something had hit the house, not too long after that. Mm. And I don't know if they tie together, but it was just really weird how that happened. I still don't know what it was.
So you have one more encounter, right?
With Bigfoot, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got Dogman.
Yeah. But let's get into this other Bigfoot encounter because I could go off on the theoretical path for days.
All right. So this happened June 23rd. I had another guy up from North Carolina. He was a retired truck driver, and so bless his heart, he fell when we were out there, but he fell in the creek and busted his head wide open. He had a big old cut on his head. But when we were on our way out there, I was showing him the structures and stuff, and I'd met him at Walmart, and we went out. So we were going to cast a track that I had found the day prior. And I get up there to where it's at, and me and him were talking, and I mixed up the plaster. I poured it in. I let it set for an hour. Well, right before that hour you got to being done, there was movement all around us. And I told Grayson, I said, don't freak out. I said, they're throwing stuff at us. They're trying to surround us. They're just going to see what we're doing. He said, I thought I was hearing stuff. He said, is that what it is? And I said, yeah. And I said, this is proof right here. So I started freaking out, and I pulled my machete out, and I pried that cast up. It shattered in a million pieces. I was so mad. And we started working our way back, and we go back across the creek, which I ended up having to throw some rocks in the creek to get back across it because the way we had to go all the way down. So I just told Grayson, I'm going to throw these rocks in here right quick to make a little path to cross. So we get up there and we're walking around, and right up above the cemetery, there's a big old opening, and there's a huge laurel patch all right in through there. Now, me and Grayson was walking. I was in front of Grayson. Grayson was behind me. And right before you get to the knoll to go down in beside the cemetery, I caught something to glimpse out of my peripheral. I just seen a black shadow or something. I just seen something black move. And I turned around and I was looking at Grayson, and Grayson was just froze. And I was like, well, what do you see? He said, you don't see that big head? And I said, where? He said, right there. Sure enough, there's a big old black head sitting in the laurels. And we sat there and watched it for about 30 seconds to a minute. And it just slowly backed up into the laurels, and it was gone. It was black, and it had gray skin because the sun was kind of hitting it a little bit.
How long did that encounter last?
It wasn't very long, like 30 seconds to a minute. Like I turned around and I seen Grayson, and I walked over to him, and he said, you don't see that head? And I said, where? And he said, right there. And I looked, and there it was. It was there, and it just slowly backed up into the laurels.
You didn't have any footage running?
Not that day, no.
And you said his name was Grayson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Backtracking to the one we were just talking to, George from NCI, North Carolina Investigates.
Yeah.
What do they investigate? Like cryptids or everything?
Yeah. Cryptids, ghosts, all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. He had that experience with you. He saw it. And then this next one with Grayson, he saw it first, and then you saw it?
Yeah. Yeah. He pointed it out to me. I didn't see it. I thought I seen a shadow or something, but that's when I turned and he was stopped. And I was like, well, he sees something. So I walked over and asked him what he seen. And he said, you don't see that big head? And I said, no. And he pointed it out to me.
How big of a head?
Every bit of that. I mean, it looked like a pumpkin.
Really?
It's huge.
And you just saw the head back away?
Yeah. It just slowly backed up into the laurels and it disappeared.
So the only thing visible was the head, and you see the head back away.
Yep.
And what color was it?
Black.
Black.
Black hair and gray skin.
Black hair, gray skin. So there's different color ones. I think everybody understands that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how true this is because the person who told me, I don't even know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. The person who told me this later spent some time in federal prison for robbing an armory. So,
oh my!
He's not the best. I like the guy. He's a nice guy.
We're a different breed.
He's built different.
He's like, sorry, I've been MIA. I was in prison. I'm like, for what? He says, I'm like, oh, you're crazy, dude.
Oh my
anyways, he told me that through his interaction before he went to prison, with his interactions, the black ones always seemed more calm, and he said that red ones were the ones that were violent. And he said, if I see a red one, I'll shoot it on sight. And so it's interesting. The red one that you used, the brownish red one you saw was the one with your wife. And that was kind of when you were being surrounded.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if you didn't escort yourself out of the area, what would have happened? You know, like
It's untelling. Like I tried not to think
she'd still be
about
out there waiting for you.
it. Yeah.
He just never came back.
Yeah.
Or she'd be part of their convent or some whatever.
They adopted her.
Yeah.
Well, she's 5'2", so I mean, whatever they want to do with her, it's on them. She's a pistol.
Yeah. Okay, so those are your Bigfoot experiences.
Yep.
Very surface level. As far as Dogman goes, is it just that one time, or was there other times that you had experiences with
I
Dogman?
seen one. I actually
Outside that picture?
Oh yeah, I actually seen one.
Okay. I want to do both these stories, okay? The one where you saw it and the one where you took the picture, because the picture one, I believe, was a similar circumstance as Hunter's as far as how that unfolded. So let's get into the picture first, and then we'll get into the where you seen it. And I will preface it with this. Where you saw it, about 20 minutes from my house. That picture, or not where you saw it, but the picture you took is about 20 minutes from my house.
Oh, that WMA is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. So, anyways, table's yours.
So, April 28th, just a big couple months ago, myself and my stepdaughter's dad, we went out turkey hunting, which I'd never been to that wildlife management area. I'd never hunted there. So, this was the first time I went turkey hunting since the spring of 2020, because I was still hunting before I had that encounter. So, we were out there. We got out there about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and the sun started to come up, and we got out and we started walking the trail. And we walked probably about a mile in, and Hunter hit the owl call, because that's the girl's dad's name's Hunter. And he hit the owl call, and we had some turkeys gobbling off in the distance. And we were like, okay, so we got to go. We got to hike a long way back there to get them, because we were looking on the map and where it sounded like they were at. They're out along the river. There's these big fields where like they do the dove shooting and all that stuff, I think. So we worked our way out there. Well, we walked all the way through that swamp, and we walked over to them fields just to find nothing. Like after the sun came up, the turkeys just shut up. And I was like, that's kind of odd. Because it's springtime. They should be out in the field, attracting females. So we were just sitting there, and I told Hunter, I said, you know what? Heck with this. We just need to go. He said, all right. So I remember distinctly when we left from those fields, we found there was a shed on that WMA where they keep all the equipment at. We went in the woods right behind that shed, and there was a creek bed, and we walked up the creek bed. And it wasn't even 10, 15 yards into the wood bipedally. And I was like, okay, he's going to freak out if I tell him there's something following us. I was like, best thing I can do is just let him hear it for himself. And we kept walking. And around the 20-minute mark, we come up to this creek, and we pull ourselves up out of the creek bed by this fallen tree. Because in the picture, you can see that fallen tree. So the creek bed is literally just right there, a straight drop. And we had to pull ourselves up out of there. And we pulled ourselves up, and we started walking, and he just stopped. And he was in front of me. And he said, you hear that? He said, there's something following us. I said, yeah, it's been following us for about 20 minutes. And he said, what is it? And I said, it's probably a Bigfoot. He said, seriously? I said, yeah, probably. And he said, well, what do we do? I said, nothing. So what I did, I turned around, I took 3 pictures. I took a picture to the left, right straight behind in front of us, and over to the right. And I said, all right, let's go. So we finished working our way out of there, and he dropped me off at home. I looked at that first picture, I didn't see nothing. But that second picture, I seen it instantly. Right there, smack dab in the middle. That thing was standing in the creek bed that we had just came out of. And I don't know how big that thing is, but I know distinctly that I pulled myself up out of that. I mean, I'm 6'6". I had to pull myself out of that creek bed.
That's interesting. Okay. So that gives context to the picture. Because when I'm looking at the picture, it seems like it's low to the ground. But what you're saying is there's a creek bed there that it was standing in. So it would have been lower. And because what we see is the head.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we had to pull ourselves up out of that creek bed by that tree.
Do you know how to get back to that specific spot?
Oh, I know the trail because right there at that WMA, there's a shed right there. And if you go in the woods right behind that place, you find a creek bed and go straight up through there.
Mm.
So it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Well, maybe I have to pull you down from Newport a couple times.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
So
speaking of which, I got a little detail about that place. So I had a guy reach out to me from Greenville area, and he grew up next to the forks of the river. He's a Blaylock. His last name is Blaylock. And he was telling me that he had a high school buddy that was out helping his dad hang tree stands out there. And he wandered off away from his dad, and he found a cave. And he heard something moving around in the cave. And he said he was looking, and he said what came out of the cave was a gray werewolf. And what he was telling me, he's like, the picture that you have, he said that just shows that there's a population of those things in there.
Yeah, there's a population all around here. That's what Scott Carpenter was talking about. And the cave idea is so like you can go many different ways with that. So one, naturally, we have the most caves in our state than any other state. So if these cryptids are out there, it's a no-brainer live in caves.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a way to move without being detected because these caves have multiple entrances.
Oh, yeah.
There's also the legend of the Bell Witch Cave, which is out towards the LBL and north of Nashville. And the LBL cave, there's several legends around it, but one of the legends is that dogmen guard the entrance to the cave. Or maybe it's not the Bell Witch, but it's one of those caves. I think it was the Bell Witch, though. Because it's a portal to hell, to the underworld. And so it's that idea as well, that these caves themselves could be portals. And I've talked to people who have seen portals open up in caves. And so there's that aspect to this as well. Do you think that guy would know how to get back to that cave? Or was it so long ago?
It was so long ago, and I asked him if he would reach out to the guy, and he said he would let me know if he got back. I'll call him later and find out.
If you have any information, because I'm trying to map certain spots that I'm interested in, because like I was saying before we went live, things are changing around here, so I'm hoping to be able to get out more. So that's that experience, and the picture is what the picture is. I mean, like I said, I've tried looking at it thinking, is this a log or what? But given the context of this thing standing down an embankment, makes a lot more sense and draws the picture out more. So the dogman encounter that you saw, what happened? And how long ago was this? I mean, this is all happening within
January 29th.
Okay, January 29th. So, dang, dude. So you're like not even 2 months in. All right.
So I've woke up that morning and I stayed at home for most of the day. And around 3:00 came and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go hike. She said, all right. And I leave. And I had it in my mind that I was going to go to the original place where I had been going at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere different. So I was looking on a map and I was like, okay, this trail looks good. It leads to a waterfall. And so I decided to go that way, and this is up towards the campground, and it's a mountain trail that leads to a waterfall. But before I had went to that trail, I found another trail, and I get out and I'm looking around, and I'm like, okay, this is some interesting stuff. And I found these trees that right at probably about a foot off the ground, they were broken, and there was a bunch of them around in that area, and the Sasquatch had made like an asterisk out of those trees. And I was like, well, that's not natural because it was literally a huge asterisk made out of those trees that were broken. I was like, all right, that's some good sign. So I kept walking around in that area some more. And then I found these rock stacks. There was 2 huge stacks of rocks that were stacked in 3s. I mean, they were big, big rocks. And I was like, all right, you know what? There's some sign here. So I just need to move on. So I head back to the truck. I head up the mountain. I get to the parking area and I hit this mountain trail. I had to cross this first creek with the old woody rinky-dink bridge. I kept walking along up through there, and I crossed 2 more creeks with these small woody rinky-dink bridges. And right before I got to the split in the trail, I had to go down across this little culverty looking, like it was a culvert. They had a trail made over it, and it had since washed off. So I walked up the hill from that area and the trail split. The trail to the left went towards the waterfall. The trail to the right led towards wherever it went, but the Park Services didn't maintain that trail to the right very good. So I didn't have no choice but to go up towards the waterfall. So I'm walking along and I come across this game trail. It shoots straight across the trail. And I'm like, all right. So I walked over and looked, and I was looking around, and I found these twist brakes. Now, one of them was twisted and broke facing up the mountain. The other one was twisted and broke facing down the mountain. The one that was facing up the mountain was probably about 8.5, 9 foot off the ground. But that other one was every bit of 12 foot off the ground. It was huge. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, because they were still kind of green. I was like, these are fresh brakes. Like, there's a Bigfoot up here. And I was looking around some more, and I seen like the small little stick structure, because it looked like a little lean-to. And I was like, all right, there's Bigfoot in here. I was like, this is going to be a good spot. So I head back to the main trail, and I'm walking, and I remember distinctly coming up on the first curve, and then it kicks back and makes another curve. So before I get to that first curve, I checked my phone. I had 34% battery. And I was like, all right. I said, I can keep going a little bit. And I was like, there's something off. And I was like, I kept going around the curve, and I checked the phone again, and it said 10% battery, and it shut off. And I was like, this is deja vu all over again. So I was standing there, and I was like, I got a decision to make. I can either head off this mountain, or I can hike on up a little bit. And I finally decided to turn around and go back to the truck. And I come around the curve, and by this point, it was starting to snow a little bit, and it was getting really cold. I packed light. I just had my hoodie on, my blue jeans, and my muck boots. And I came around the curve, and I walked, and it wasn't even 10, 15 yards after coming around the curve, and I heard it movement behind me to my right. And I was like, all right, I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn dead on it, and it's going to be there. And I was like, it's going to be a Bigfoot. I told myself it was a Bigfoot. And I turned, and boy, was I wrong. Whenever I first seen it, I was like, okay, that's a wolf. It was laying down flat on the ground, like just flat on the ground. And I just seen its head and its ears, and I could see the body outline. And it had these huge, bright yellow eyes. And I was like, okay, this is not a wolf. This is something different. And I was like, this might be the dog man thing that people are talking about. And this thing pushes itself off the ground with its forearms, and it takes 3 steps, and it's not even 15 yards away from me. It's got its paw propped up on the tree. Well, its hand rather. The hands were very raccoon-like. And the top of its head in between its ears was flat, and it had almost like German Shepherd ears. It was dark brown, and it had a big poofy tail like a fox's, and like the nose was smudged up into the snout, and it had like a mane running down the back of its neck. But the weirdest thing to me was most stories that you hear of Dogman having backwards facing legs. This thing that I seen did not have backwards facing legs. It had forward facing legs like a human. And as I was looking into this thing's eyes, it's a lot different than looking into a Bigfoot. When you look into one of these Dogman's eyes, it's nothing. It's just an empty void. It's not a very, very good feeling to look into those eyes, because quite frankly, when I looked into those eyes, my life was flashing before my eyes. My wife was going to be a widow without me. My kids were going to grow up, have families of their own without me. It was just everything was flashing. And I knew that I had to run. And I don't know how. I guess it was just an act of God that I made it out of there. But I started backpedaling, and I kept my eyes on this thing. And it was growling and snarling. I had that one arm still propped up on the tree, and it was still like playfully like acting like it was going to get me. I don't know. But I kept backpedaling, and then I ran. Now, this thing was staying in the wood line. It was not on the trail chasing me. It was staying in the wood line. And I'm working my way down the hill, and I'm trying not to fall. Like, I don't know how I didn't. And I go down the hill, and I cross the culvert, and I'm coming back up the hill, and I can hear it crushing through the brush, still chasing me. And I come up to the first bridge that I had to cross, and I can see the brush moving, and it's coming through the brush, and it's chasing me. and I crossed that bridge. Like I'm barely trying to keep an eye on this thing. Like I'm looking at. I've never moved so fast in all my life. Like I ain't no track star or nothing, but I was going, and I come to the second bridge, and I'm almost positive that's when it stopped following me. I don't know for certain, but I do know one thing, that I got out of there. But there is one thing that I remember distinctly about that day. I never did pray before I went into the woods, but I do remember distinctly that day I prayed before I went into the woods.
What spawned the prayer?
I don't know. I just had the feeling that I needed to. Like it was just one of those moments, like, you know, it just happens. And I just had to. Like, it was weird. Like I normally didn't pray before I went into the woods, but that day I did.
So I want to, I'd like to meet up with you sometime and go out to that specific location.
I've got a still capture of that dog, man.
Wait, you got it on video or picture?
From December 17th.
Wait, that was December 17th?
No, I seen it the 29th of January, but I've got it on film from December 17th in that area that I've been in. It was in the area.
Hold on a second. So it was, you were there before and you have it on video?
No, it was in the original area. It came down the mountain from that top area. It looks like the same one.
I'm not tracking.
When he first went in, and it was just around the graveyard at the cemetery.
The first day you went to the cemetery?
No, it was December 17th, not the 7th.
This is so frustrating.
The second time he went in.
All right, so but this all happened in the same area?
It's where I seen the dog man is straight up on the mountain.
Okay.
I've not been back. I went back February 2nd. I had now my friends Rick and Steven, who I was out with this weekend. They came down and we've been friends ever since. And we got a size estimate on this thing. It was 8 feet tall, not including the ears, almost 4 foot at the shoulders. And from where it was laying to the tree was 28 feet, and it took that in 3 steps. But here's the kicker. We had a compass with us. That compass was going haywire.
And this is all in Cosby.
Yeah.
A lot of this is all in Cosby that you shared today? So you've been doing the Cosby stuff hard.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something going on in Cosby.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's feral people too.
Oh,
the girl's stepdad just seen a feral person.
For real? Who did?
My stepdaughter's dad.
Okay.
The one that we had the dogman encounter with in Force of the WMA.
You see, and this is the exact reason. He said he took off running. He never ran that fast before. I'm the guy that would have been behind him.
Oh, no, we're tripping you.
I was lunch.
We're tripping you.
For the Gifford, Glenn.
Which one of us can make it, is at least likely to make it? You get tripped.
He can feed off you a lot longer.
Sacrifice.
Than he can feed off me.
Okay, okay. This is all happening. I'm coming to Cosby, and soon. I got to figure this out, but soon.
Well, I will let you in on another little secret. This other cemetery, it's like 2 hollers over. Apparently last year, there was 2 friends in there, and they were just sitting in the car, and all of a sudden they heard something coming towards the vehicle, and they look and they see about this 7.5, 8 foot tall figure, blacker than the night, with humongous wings, and it let out a shriek. And they got out of there. Now, they left to California and they ain't been back.
Yeah, there's stuff going on. I mean, just based off your stories, and I'd be interested to hear what other locals have experienced over the years. If you're listening right now and you're in the Cosby area and you have experience, please reach out to us. But I definitely want to get out there. I remember you sending me where the cemetery was, but I'm not going to go alone at night, but I'm going at night. So,
well, I mean, we can go in there.
We'll go during the day, but we'll definitely go in at night too. And Glenn's coming, so don't worry.
Now, just tell me how it goes, guys.
We're bringing lunch. We're bringing lunch.
You gotta come.
But no. So, shoot, man, I'm forgetting. So that's what I wanted to say. I think, based off of what you shared with the one that was 20 minutes from my house, the pictures, boom, boom, boom. Hunter took 3 pictures too, boom, boom, boom. He had a feeling, and that's when he got it. And also with Hunter, that was his most recent, but his first experience was this thing appearing before him and his son out in the woods, and they run. It gives quote unquote chase for the same reason for you is the same reason for him. If it wanted, it would have eaten you.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some kind of rule system here.
Well, I did learn this. I looked on the maps in that area where I had that dogman encounter. There's 2 cemeteries. Like
and Dogman is often talked about hanging around cemeteries, portals to hell, man. I'm telling you. Okay, cool. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to investigate with you, and I'm going to get a hold of Hunter. I kind of want to get you and Hunter. I don't know if Hunter's going to actually be willing to do this, to be honest with you. But I think it'd be interesting, maybe not just Hunter, but people who have similar experiences, to get them together to go out and see what kind of amplification we can make happen.
I mean, you might be playing with something you don't understand.
I play with everything I don't understand, dude. I don't understand any of this. So.
Well, here's the thing. After he went up there, was it after your buddies went up there and you guys seen that? Was it the next day or a couple days later that these people showed up at your house?
Oh, yeah.
What are you talking about?
MIBs.
What happened?
So shortly after that, there was some black Escalades or Tahoes driving around. Newport ain't got nothing like that.
No.
They've got Ford Explorers and Chargers. They don't have no Tahoes or Suburbans. So there one day that I was going to go out there, it was like in April, and right as I'm leaving my road to get on the 4-lane, there was 2 of them sitting at the errands, and I was like, okay. So I was like, I got to lose these guys somehow. So I pulled out, and they pulled out right in behind me. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I just took a back road, and I was just booking it. And I guess I had lost them. But I came back home, and I sold my truck back in May, I think. I sold it to a guy in Morristown. And he called me that night. He said, dude, what did you do? And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, I got 6 unmarked vehicles sitting at the end of my driveway. They bugged it.
Okay, so all right, so the lady who I mentioned earlier who went from Newport to Indiana because of this stuff, she had similar experiences with people following them. That's interesting. And with what you just shared, I still don't know how to make sense of that kind of stuff, because I'm just like,
yeah,
what is it? You having experiences, what does that have anything to do with?
Yeah, exactly.
With that stuff, like it doesn't make sense. It's something that I just don't understand. So yeah, that's interesting. But did anything else happen from that? I mean, did you have any communication with these guys?
I had phone calls, from these unrestricted numbers and all this other stuff. But one day I had went out, and there was a white truck, brand new Chevrolet, parked. There's only one way to get into this place, and this truck was backed in. It's a brand new Chevrolet truck, tinted out. It was white, and it had a white trailer with red letters that said Talon on the side of it. And I was like, well, what's Talon? So I couldn't get in there for like 3 days. And then they were gone. I was like, well, this is weird. And I was like, well, maybe they're just surveying land or something. And I looked it up, and they're associated with the Department of Defense and NASA. And apparently they're a mineral company. But that's not the only time that I've seen the Talon trucks. Actually, I think it was on my daughter's birthday or somewhere around in there. We seen 2 box trucks, like the big long box trucks that were Talon trucks. They were white and had Talon written on the side of them, and they were heading towards Cosby.
Hmm. So you don't know if the Talon trucks are actually directly associated with these unmarked vehicles?
I don't know if they are or not, but I just think it's weird that they just started showing up out there in the middle of the national park.
Well, I mean, for one, you don't know how long they've been doing it. You've been doing this less than a year, so you don't know. But the idea of the SUVs, like the black SUVs, did anybody ever communicate with you, like any kind of aggression towards you, as far as like
just the phone calls,
just to tell
me to keep my mouth shut?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he calls me, and I got sort of freaked out about it because I know the type of people that he's going to have to maneuver around, because I've obviously listened to a lot of reports and read a lot of things on how these, people disappear. And once you start learning and giving too much information. And so I was at work and he like texted me, is like, dude, I'm freaking out. And I'm like, what's going on? He was like, there's this vehicle parked outside of my house. And I'm like, and he said, and they actually called my phone. And I said, what did they say? And they said, did you see something? And he was like, yeah. He said, well, keep your mouth shut. And I said, well, can you go outside of your house and go around the back of them and try to get some tag pictures? And he was like, they're gone now. He said, but they called me and told me to keep my mouth shut. And they blocked their number, so I don't have their phone number.
Yeah, every time I get a phone call from these restricted numbers, it's nothing. Either they won't say nothing or whatever the case may be.
How often did you get weird phone calls before all this stuff? Like, I mean, like it's not just a spam call.
Yeah, it wasn't no spam call. No.
So I mentioned earlier about Trucker Joe, and part of his story is similar in the sense that, like, I mean, he killed it. Like, he killed one.
An asset.
Yeah. And they came to him and said, you killed our asset. So, that's interesting.
Well, I think that what I seen January 29th, I think that Dogman was some kind of hybrid. Because after I had seen that and I started to talk about it, that's when the vehicles and everything started showing up.
Well, yeah, and also the characteristics of the legs says to me that it's probably some kind of hybrid manufactured type creature. So so when you said that the legs weren't backwards, like like a canine would be, but more
they were like
human.
Human, yes.
Yeah. So I mean that's like
it didn't have a hawk in its leg like a dog. He was like human legs.
That's when you said that put it into two categories for me, either manufactured or like dark magic. Like,
yeah, that's like
human transformation
stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, there are these rituals that they'll wear the pelt of a wolf and try to transform. And I have a theory that, and it's not like gospel or anything. It's just I have a thought that, are they transforming themselves, or are they projecting through ritual an image of what they're trying to be, and people who come across what they see is this upright walking dog, but in reality it's not somebody who actually transformed, but what you're seeing is you're coming underneath the spell almost. Yeah. So there's that aspect, but for me, when you said that, it kind of put it into those two categories, which is actually worse.
Yeah.
I think it's worse. Like if you're coming across a dogman creature that's manufactured by some kind of,
it's unpredictable.
Yeah. Like if it's like, well, it's unpredictable, but if you're coming across something that is an asset, that means that like it's not happen chance. It's not that it's not happen chance. How do I say it? It's like you have an uphill battle then, because it's not like just you versus Dogman. It's you versus Dogman versus shadow entity, whatever that entity is. Right. It's now a third party, and that third party is probably orchestrating, which means that maybe your encounters could be orchestrated too, which is interesting to think about. I just saw that now. That
is very interesting to think about. Yeah,
when you're thinking about these entities, because I view them as an entity. They're a hybrid physical, but they're also massive entities. And you go back in the Bible and you start reading in Genesis and how the Nephilim, how they were destroyed, and part of their the fallen angels, part of their judgment was to watch their kids be destroyed. Obviously, what did they kill them with? I know David used stone, and it was a headshot. So, it's when you start thinking about, man, there's all kind of things, and you can go out down all kind of rabbit holes with this. But you mentioned anything that's coming, people have to go to the mountains. Are you safe going to this? Have they manufactured these things to control that aspect of it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So these things are extremely methodical, very intelligent, on a scale that's just off the chart. They're cunning, and they were DNA issues were going. Was it Methuselah? I don't know who it was in the Bible, but they were actually doing this stuff in the Old Testament and playing with DNA and bloodlines and creating things.
Yeah.
So is that just a carryover from, maybe manuscripts that's been out there that they have found, and who knows? But this again, it's a rabbit trail with many holes.
Yep.
Definitely a rabbit trail. But when it comes to the manufacturer side of things, it's also not to overlook the fact that we're so close to Y12. We don't know.
Fair enough. Yeah, CERN is shady. They're deep.
We don't know. I mean, I've said it before on the show, but from what I was told by a local farmer when he was a kid growing up, the old timers then said that when Y12 was being built, they started seeing this white Bigfoot creature running around the area. And so was that here beforehand and they stirred it up, or was it here because of that? Was a white Bigfoot creature or creatures brought here to keep people away from specific areas because it was known as a secret city? So they were trying to be secretive about it. It kind of goes in with what you were talking about with, the dog man. And if it is designed, if it is created and manufactured, is it to herd like dogs, us, the cattle?
Right.
It's an interesting thought.
That is an interesting concept.
Well, it's like you had a person on, and I think it was you that had a person on, and he said that he was in a parking lot at a grocery store, and he seen this.
Yeah.
He started smelling this stuff, and this thing followed him.
Mm-hmm. Adam, I think his name was Adam.
Yeah.
It chased him down the highway.
Was it like on Oak Ridge Highway or something over in there?
Like that, yeah.
At a food city?
It's been a while since I listened to that one.
Holy cow.
Yeah. It chased him down the highway and a trucker saw it. And he said the trucker pushed this thing off his car. So yeah, I forgot about Adam. So and even Scott Carpenter had said that even here in town, these things are in abandoned buildings.
I believe it.
And I never got a chance to get the location of these abandoned buildings off him.
Man, that was a big
I wonder
loss.
if his son would know.
I'm sure Travis would know.
Yeah.
Which I know some of the places that he went to. So I think we can figure it out.
Just his death in general was so
I'd rather
suspect,
not talk about it.
yeah.
I'd rather not talk about it.
Man, that's just sad.
Yeah, it's sad for sure.
Plethora of information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys, Bigfoot, Dogman, Men in Black. Oh my. Yeah. It's just like,
Yeah.
So there's something going on in Cosby.
Yep.
And according to at least theory of what you've experienced with the unmarked vehicles or whatever, it sounds like maybe somebody else knows there's something going on in the Cosby area as well. I don't think it's just Cosby, but it seems like Cosby, just based off of what your experiences have been, is pretty active. So we're gonna get our backpacks on and we're gonna go to head on to Cosby and see what we can drum up.
Well, I mean,
Good luck, guys.
it was an event. Well, you're gonna miss out, but
I'll bring the Dogman Assassins with me, the cryptid warfare guys.
Drewski.
Yeah, we'll bring Drewski.
Yeah, we'll bring Drewski.
So.
Yeah. Which like the past 2 nights when we were in there, they were hollering. So,
well, let's go find them. I gotta find one. I gotta find one before I die. So, maybe I'll die then. All right, guys. Listen, I'm gonna wind this thing down. I appreciate you guys hopping in the studio with me, though.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. So, thank you.
yes, sir. No problem. Look forward to it again.
All right,
Oh, yeah.
plenty more times.
Oh yeah.
I'm just feeling probably like you. I'm just drifting, probably right beside you. All the abyss, control from afar. What did we miss? Now we're left with the scars.
We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this glow, it's hard to hide. the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
Thought that's dark, it's hard to find.
It's bright.
Everybody wanna preach a happy median. I see they dopamine fix come from media. Now your spirit getting booked on Expedia. Soul searching like Long Island Medium. I should've been taught. Sleepwalk through life, but being woke is an insult. They should've been caught. They want us flooded in fear by drowning us on the asphalt. We love the lows, but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this glow, it's hard to hide.
It's bright.
We love the lows, but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
Thought this dark, it's hard to find.
It's bright. Masking from elites, got us attaching what is free. Now we're rationing our needs for our soul.
Yeah, we're not fasting from belief. The smell of Sharpies right the streets, looting liabilities like it's gold.
Atomic number 79, Gucci, Prada, Jordan High. Sniff that line, it's on the house till you're sold.
The ones that keep us locked for the felony time, or the ones that fund the dollars for the BLM sign. Y'all ain't really doing what y'all supposed to. Y'all just follow suit like the rest do. Oh, yeah. We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this glow, it's hard to hide.
It's bright.
We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
Thought this dark, it's hard to